definitely expanded my vocabulary as a filmmaker. I would say that I'm not the same filmmaker that I was meeting him and having that whole experience of being on a film like Roma. A resonance way beyond, just 5 years or 4 years or when the audience sees it immediately. But I don't think you can predict these things. By 19, I had quit working in Balaji and UTV and I started doing my own work. And wanting to enrich myself from just the experience, the wisdom, and the knowledge that a master like Alfonso would have. So for me, it's like a absolute dream and an absolute privilege to, get to know him and to learn from him and to see him at work because he's, operating at a very different level. He's a super experienced filmmaker. He's made some of the best films of the 20th and the 21st, and he might as well be on another planet making films with the kind of budgets and the kind of ambitions with which he makes his films. So for me to be able to get his time and to be able to pick his brains about have conversations about a filmmaker's life was just an absolute treat, and those are lessons that I'm going to cherish for the rest of my life for sure.
What was the experience of observing him on the sets of Roma?
Yeah, it was a bit overwhelming. It was a bit daunting. Just the kind of attention to detail, just the scale of the entire project, just the kind of elaborate lengths to which he had gone and his team had gone to execute vision. Taught me that yes, there is craft, there is skill, there are many technical aspects to filmmaking, but it all boils down to having a vision. If you have a vision, the rest follows. And I realized that the films in filmmaking never get easier. No matter what, no matter how many films you've made in the past, the battles always remain the same, and every time you go to a war almost, and you war with the best of your spirit. So that was also very inspiring to see.
You also said that 30 or 40 minutes of a conversation with a great like Alfonso is far more important than many other things. What are the sort of conversations that you've had with Alfonso that have really impacted you?
Yeah, like I said, these are conversations about everything under the sun. I mean, half the times we're joking, pulling each other's leg and all, but yeah, just about while trying to navigate this career, what not to do, how to think in terms of the long term, in terms of your career and not just short term success or just making money through films, and also what cinema means to him, and what cinema means to me, and how it all boils down to your worldview. You look at the world, and then at the time navigating the practical side of filmmaking, which is like keeping a team motivated, which is the producer or the corporate or whoever is giving you the money, the changing landscape of the entertainment industry, like we all have been grappling with that. So yeah, just conversations about life and cinema and your attitude towards the world, basically.
Okay, what are the technical aspects that you maybe learn from him? Something that you would want to incorporate in future?
Well, many, because I was there for the grading process. I was the sound mixing process. I saw him edit the film. I saw how deviously he uses, VFX for storytelling, not for like some VFX kind of special effects, but just storytelling. How he handled the actors, how he mixed the sound of the film in Dolby Atmos, and the kind of almost painter like grading that he did, how he lit the film because he was shooting the film himself, and not just him, talking to his collaborators, talking to his production designer, talking to his colorist, talking to his all of these people who are all so experienced and like top of the line professionals. They all imparted their wisdom and knowledge to me, and I really picked all of their brains, and I got to learn so much which I did not know, and that definitely expanded my vocabulary as a filmmaker. I would say that I'm not the same filmmaker that I was meeting him and having that whole experience of being on a film like Roma.
You've had a very unconventional curve when it comes to the learning process. You started at 17 at Balaji, and part of the serials, and
Mm.
you met quite a few people who introduced you to world cinema over there. The money that you earned, you made a DVD library, and you watched a lot of world cinema. So in many ways, one can say that you are self-taught. Many people would advise that
Yeah.
maybe you need to have some training in terms of, say, FTI or NSD or anything of that sort. So from your personal experience, what
Mm.
would you like to tell to independent filmmakers? How important is it to have some level of experience, and what they make of that experience?
I think experience is very important because yes, I didn't formally train in filmmaking, but started making my own work and started doing projects from the age of 19. By 19, I had quit working in Balaji and UTV, and I started doing my my own work. And even if just even if it was just a short film, you still make a lot of mistakes that kind of form and train you for bigger projects that you make in your life. It still teaches you how to manage egos. It still teaches you how to manage people, how to keep a team motivated. It still tells you and informs you about your own working style, your own insecurity. So I think it's very important to keep working, rather than being in your own head and thinking, oh, yes, and I'll do that when I get a chance. I think the best teacher is real life experience and making your own mistakes. The mistakes I've made, but if you make those mistakes on your own, that's the hard way to learn, but the only way to learn some very solid lessons. And then beyond that, I think one should have conviction in their work and in their intent, and follow their instincts, follow their intuition, and hustle. A filmmaker's life is a hustler's life. You need to hustle so much because you're not a writer who's just writing, or a painter who's just in a room. You're hustling. You're making calls. You're being begging, stealing, requesting the world to make your film or whatever happen. So it's you gotta hustle.
That's a very interesting way to say what you're saying. You mentioned about managing the egos part of it. You mentioned that a good filmmaker has to be a hustler as well. Many a times we see that
Hmm.
idealism tends to come in between the vision as an artist and what they need to do in
Hmm.
practical terms, in terms of managing the whole show. Um, would you say that a good director also has to be a good manager?
I don't know what else there is to film directing. I think it's 90% only that. So yeah, absolutely. You're 90%. I mean, technically, the actors come and act, the writer's written something, the DP shoots it, the sound records it, the editor edits it, director doing. It's you. You are like a conductor of an orchestra. Even though everybody knows how to play their instrument, you're kind of guiding the entire piece and directing the symphony in a way. So yeah, you are. It's 90% management, I would say. It is such a practical
Um,
medium that there is very little scope for idealism. When the sun is going down and minutes to get your shot, there is very little scope for idealism there anyway.
Now, in the teaser of Disciple, the movie has not still released in India. We'll talk about that shortly. But it is mentioned that the artist. Why is it important to be lonely in a way as well? Similarly, for the director, many times I've heard directors say that it's a very lonely job directing a film. Would you say that?
Well, not as compared to writing a film. For me, like the
Hmm.
writing process is the loneliest process. As a director, it's a bit tricky because yes, you are interacting with a lot of people, and you are managing a lot of people, but ultimately you are the only captain of the ship, and you are responsible for everything in the film. A bad edit, a bad acting, or or even the script. Will blame the director if the script, if they don't like the script or whatever. And it's weird because we have built a system or a culture where the director is given all the credit when a film works, which is also not true because there are so many people who have contributed to that. I mean, of course, in India we also credit the actors quite a lot. And if a film fails, we also discredit the director the most and put all the blame on the director. So it's a dual-edged sword in that sense. And in that sense, yes, it's a lonely job because again, if a DP shoots a film that doesn't work, or if a sound recordist, records sound for a film that's a flop, their careers may be as severely as a director's would with a flop to his or her name. So in that sense, yeah, you've got a lot at stake, and it is quite lonely.
Okay, now The Disciple has won Best Screenplay at Venice Film Festival. What is the importance of good writing for making any film whatsoever?
There are people who make films without scripts. There are people just improvise or land up on set or have a very rough idea of a script. But the way I work and the way I to focus the most on the script. For me, it's the toughest process and also the process where I spend the most amount of time, most amount of efforts. Because for me, the script blueprint of your intent, as to what is your intent when you go on set. Yeah, you could have all kinds of technical flourishes in your film, but it's ultimately about what is it that you're trying to say, what is it that you're trying to express, and again, that intent for me, in a way, the script becomes a blueprint for that. So yeah, and it also helps you plan better. It also helps your collaborators get a very clear idea of what your vision is. So it is, I would say, very, very good writing is much needed in today's times and also.
All right, now Court had a lot of Marathi. It has elements of Hindi as well. The Disciple is Marathi. In an interview, you've said that if a film requires you to make the film in Gujarati, you'll prefer to do that instead of
Yeah, yeah,
choosing
yeah.
supposedly an easier way and like a more populist way of making in a language that is having a more wider impact. Maybe say in Hindi or English, for example. Many a times you see Indian films being made in English, and they seem a bit unnatural at times.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about the nature of the script. It's about which world the film is set in. And for me, cinema is its own language. Cinema for me is universal language. So then the literal language for me doesn't matter because see, I grew up watching films with English subtitles. People are watching, even content now with subtitles because it's a hard for people. So people are more and more used to watching films with subtitles, and in other languages. For example, a film like Parasite, everybody in the world, who loves films and is into those kind of films, saw the film Parasite, which was a Korean film, and enjoyed it, despite the barrier of the subtitles. So for me, language is also a matter of texture. So I don't want to do something that looks unconvincing, unnatural. I would go for a language in which the act comfortable, in which the story flows better, and have it subtitled. But again, there is no such restriction. If a film demands to be made in Hindi, then it's going to be Hindi. If it's going to be English, then it's English. So it depends really on the nature of the film that you're trying to make.
Were you disappointed when The Disciple could not make it to the Oscars?
Of the film in every way, you could have written something, you could direct it in whatever way, but it's literally human beings connect human beings. So the reason why we go to watch films and plays is other human beings. So definitely, the actors can make or break a film and the story, because if you don't buy into that, if you're not on the journey of those characters and you don't empathize with them, it's just going to be a drag, a complete bore for you to watch that story or to invest in it emotionally. And when you are, not working with very famous established actors or very experienced actors, and you're working with people who have never acted before, or who are absolute, like, newcomers, then there is even more pressure on you to make them feel comfortable, to cast right. And because the audience doesn't care about this context of them being non-actors or whatever, for the audience, they are watching a film. It either works for them or it doesn't work for them. So you have to work, really, really hard to get the right kind of performances. And I would say that's even true with actors, not just non-professional actors, but even with proper, professional actors, because every role is a new battle for them. Every character is, like you're starting from scratch. So how you imbibe that character, how you imbibe the universe, the world that you're trying to portray, and the progression and the beats of that particular journey. If it doesn't work, the audience may not be able to articulate it why it's not working, but they would just not care enough for that film. So the casting, I would say, after the script, for me, the casting is the most important aspect of filmmaking.
All right, you spoke about the language of cinema, cinematic language. When it comes to Court, many people really liked the pacing of the film, the way the film was paced. Even the
Hmm.
silences, they spoke a lot. How important are silences for a filmmaker like you?
Right. Again, I would say it totally depends on the film, and and how you vary your breaks. For example, if a film is only silences, that's going to be boring as hell. you know. And if a film is only like noise and loud music, you're going to get desensitized to that as well. So I think it's all about contrast and different rhythms and different textures. But yeah, I personally like films that allow you to breathe. Personally like films that allow you to take things in and slow down a little bit rather so much happening, there is no time to process anything. I personally get bored in those kind of films, supposedly more entertaining. So
Okay. Now, what is the advice that you'd like to give to budding filmmakers? The sort of precautions that they need to take when it comes to tackling political subjects or maybe subjects that are dealing with religion.
what advice can anybody give in today's times about that? Faridun, what would be your advice? I'm curious. There is going to be so much self-censorship instilled in people that they are going to be advising themselves, okay, let's not get into this, or let's not take this risk, or we'll be trolled, or we'll have FIRs booked against us, or our work will be taken down. I think we've gone beyond that time of giving advice about, there are no more advices. There's just FIRs and happening. So there is, I think people are just going to be scared now, and they're going to do a lot of self censorship. But jokes apart, um, there are many filmmakers, many great filmmakers who worked in countries that were 10 times more sensitive and 10 times more harsh with their outrage than say in India. These filmmakers found ways, clever ways of themselves, in a slightly twisted manner, in not such a direct or such an obvious manner, and to get away with down the issues, And sometimes that kind of a limitation can inspire you and make you even more creative in how you put across your thoughts and put across your stories. So that is one piece of advice, that if they find it really impossible to say something, very overtly or directly, maybe they should be a little more creative and a little more. So it's sad that I have to say this, because ideally there shouldn't be any censorship. Ideally there shouldn't be such a fear in anybody. So it's
Okay.
kind of also sad that we have to talk about it.
Okay. If you had to make quote today, would you have made it differently or the same way?
I would have probably made it the same way. Action would have been there. I think people would have. I mean, we were even worried back then, even in 2014, we were really worried about censorship and how people are going to react to it, whether we'll have like sedition charges leveled at us, or we don't know who might get offended. But luckily, none of that happened. So yeah, but I really do think that in today's time, yeah, we would think even more about that, and we would be even more worried. And I definitely think the reaction would be different, because yeah, things have kind of amped up quite a bit in terms of just the amount of offense people are taking, and just the kind of nitpicking that's happening about what is offensive and what is inappropriate and what you can say and what you can't say.
When you're making a film, when you're conceiving a film, when you're writing a film, is it important for you for the film to have a longevity in terms of its relevance?
I mean, yeah, you would want that. You would want your film to kind of, have a resonance way beyond, just 5 years or 4 years, or when the audience sees it immediately. But I don't think you can predict these things, I don't think you can control these things. Like what's going to be relevant 20 years down the line, what's going to be relevant 40 years down the line.
All right, Faridoon and Chaitanya, thank you for joining us for this conversation. I believe we've also lost Chaitanya and his network. Happens when you're doing a virtual show.